Have you ever finished a book and just felt, well, changed? Not just because of the story itself, but maybe how it was told, how the author, persuaded you or made you feel something deeply, maybe even challenged what you believed. Well, you're in for a really interesting deep dive today. We want you to enjoy a bold new take on book coverage with this extended analysis. It's more than just a summary, though, yeah, we include that too. This feature looks at how the author shapes their argument, how they build influence, and how they earn, or maybe sometimes lose, your trust. The idea is to give you the tools to read with, let's say, sharper insight and maybe greater discernment. Wondering if you should read this book. This should definitely help. It's also, I think, excellent for aspiring writers. And hey, if you find this expanded format valuable, please let us know. Your feedback really does help guide our future content. Oh, and just a quick technical note for you, our listener. You are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation. This is powered by Google's NotebookLM, and the aim is for deeper, more dynamic book analysis. So today we're diving deep into Brandon Sanderson's Words of Radiance. This is the second book in the Stormlight Archive series. Came out back in 2014. It's epic fantasy, sure, but it feels like so much more.
It really does. What's fascinating here, I think, is how Sanderson, through this book, isn't just, laying out a plot. He masterfully uses a whole range of rhetorical strategies. These create really profound emotional resonance. They build these incredibly immersive experiences for the reader, and they bring up some deep philosophical questions. It elevates the whole thing, far beyond what you might expect just from the genre label.
Okay, right. Let's unpack that. So we're not just giving you the plot points, although we'll certainly touch on the main story beats. Our goal today is really to dissect the craft itself, the techniques that make this book so compelling. We want to understand why it connects so strongly with its massive audience, and maybe what we can learn from how it's put together. So let's start with the who and the why. The speaker, the writer here, is Brandon Sanderson. And when you talk about modern fantasy authors, his reputation is huge, especially for building these complex, internally consistent worlds. His plotting is so intricate, and the logic within his magic systems, like the surge bind used by the Knights Radiant, it's almost scientific sometimes. That consistency really anchors the reader's trust, I find.
Absolutely. You believe the impossible things happening on Roshar because he's so meticulously laid out the rules. Even the exceptions feel earned, And if we connect that to the bigger picture, Sanderson isn't just a storyteller. He really is an architect. Like you said, his credibility, his ethos, it's built brick by brick on those consistent rules and also on the believable character arcs. They're often morally gray, aren't they? Think about Kaladin's journey from being a slave to leading Bridge 4, always battling that internal despair.
Or Dalinar grappling with his violent past and trying to understand those visions he's having from the Almighty.
Exactly. They aren't perfect heroes. Their struggles feel authentic within the world Sanderson built. So we trust him. We trust Sanderson to deliver on the narrative promises because that internal logic is so strong and the character growth feels well-earned.
And the timing, the occasion of this book, Words of Radiance, coming out in 2014.
Yeah.
That's interesting too, isn't it? Being the second book in the Stormlight Archives.
Yeah.
It had massive expectations after The Way of Kings.
Yeah.
It needed to expand this already huge world. But also, it felt like it was responding to this hunger in the fantasy genre for really immersive worlds that tackled, contemporary issues.
Yeah.
Things like morality, leadership, even mental health. Moving beyond just simple good versus evil.
That's a great point. And the primary audience, sure, it's epic fantasy fans, people who love those sprawling sagas, the intricate magic. But Sanderson's layered storytelling, it does more. It accommodates secondary audiences too. Readers interested in, say, deeper philosophical questions, the nature of honor, the weight of vengeance, or maybe just those seeking really profound emotional journeys through characters like Shalyn, her struggle with her past trauma and her fragmented identity. You don't have to be a hardcore fantasy reader to connect with those universal themes.
So what does that tell us about his main purpose then? Beyond just, entertaining us with big battles and cool magic. Sanderson seems to really aim to provoke thought and to engage us emotionally. He does this through intense character development, watching Shalyn find her power, seeing Kaladin face his fears, and through the constant danger facing Roshar and these intricate mysteries he sets up that often challenge the usual fantasy tropes, like what's the real story behind the Voidbringers or the Recreants?
Right. So the subject, the core themes of the book kind of give you that initial summary of what you're getting into. At its heart, Words of Radiance is about the The very fragile attempt to refound the Knights Radiant. But maybe even more than that, it's about individuals grappling with really intense personal trauma. We see these very human, often quite messy, redemptive arcs for the main characters, and there's this ongoing, brutal struggle between vengeance and honor. You see it epitomized in the conflict between Dalinar wanting unity and the understandable desire for retribution against the Parshendi. These aren't simple ideas, they're explored deeply through everyone's journey.
And the tone really mirrors that complexity. It's intense, definitely.
Yeah.
Often quite introspective. It shifts between these moments of incredible grandeur, the huge clashes on the Shattered Plains, the sheer power of the Shard Bearers, and then these incredibly intimate, personal, emotional struggles. The way it shifts between points of view, from Kaladin fighting his depression to Shallan uncovering these dark family secrets, it just pulls you right into each character's head. It makes their struggles feel incredibly personal. Okay, let's dig into the craft a bit more now. The world building and that emotional connection in Words of Radiance. It is, no question, epic fantasy. And Sanderson uses the whole fiction toolkit, right? Narrative immersion, powerful symbolism, deep emotional resonance, and honestly, some of the most sophisticated world building you're likely to find. Roshar feels less like a setting and more like, well, a living entity.
That raises a really important question, I think. How does the medium itself enhance the message? Because the book isn't just text on a page, is it? Sanderson brilliantly includes things like in-world artwork, Shallan's sketches, which bring these alien creatures and landscapes vividly to life, and various documents, too, like scholarly texts, bits of history, even character journal entries woven right in.
Oh yeah, those are amazing.
They're not just decoration, they added this incredible layer of authenticity and really deepen the reader's immersion. When you see a map drawn by a character or read an in-world quote heading a chapter, it grounds the fantastic elements. It makes Roshar feel so much more real and lived in.
That attention to detail is just phenomenal. It almost feels like you're holding an artifact from Roshar itself sometimes.
Yeah.
And the exigence for this book, that's an interesting concept. Exigence is basically the specific need or demand that prompted the writing. In this case, Words of Radiance needed to deliver something original, something emotionally deep within the fantasy genre, but it also had to navigate being part of this huge ongoing series.
Right, tricky balance.
Exactly. It had to avoid major spoilers for future books while still being accessible, both for longtime fans and maybe for new readers just jumping in. Yeah. That's a really delicate act for any author. Now, here's where I think it gets really interesting. The pathos, the emotional appeals. Sanderson portrays trauma, resilience, the need for belonging.
Yeah.
He does it so powerfully. You can't help but feel for these characters. He creates this profound empathy for flawed people who are just constantly striving for worth, for forgiveness. Think about Kaladin's fierce loyalty to Bridge 4, his desperate fight against his own despair, or Shallan's journey to accept her multiple identities, each one kind of born from surviving past abuse. These aren't just plot devices. They feel like deeply relatable human experiences, just amplified by this fantastical setting.
His rhetorical choices there, especially that emotional authenticity and the relatable character development, they're just highly effective. For readers looking not just for rich fantasy, but for genuinely human, evolving characters they can really invest in and root for, Words of Radiance absolutely delivers that emotional core, that feeling of hope fighting against overwhelming odds. That's the pathos hitting home for you, the reader.
And then there's the logos, the sheer logic of the world. The world itself, the conflicts driving the plot, and especially those incredibly detailed magic systems, it's all meticulously logical. Sanderson sets up clear rules for things like surge binding or the fabrials they use, and importantly, the consequences for using them. There are robust cause and effect relationships.
Yes, crucial.
It makes every character action, every battle plan, every twist in the narrative feel compellingly rational. Even when you're dealing with things as fantastical as, sentient spren or swords that cut through solid rock.
Right. When Seath, the assassin in white, uses his lashings, you understand the mechanics of how he's doing it based on the rules, not just that he's doing it. That consistency builds enormous trust.
Let's dive into some specific rhetorical strategies now, the techniques that really elevate this book. First off, language and style. Sanderson uses varied diction, varied syntax with real precision. He shifts between formal, almost poetic language, especially in those solemn oaths the Knights Radiant speak, or in high-stakes political talks, and then switches to surprisingly casual, sometimes witty banter.
Yeah, like among Kaladin's Bridge 4 crew or Shallan's interactions with Pattern.
Exactly. That shift in tone, it doesn't just make it feel more real, it strengthens immersion, but it also sharpens the characterization. Each voice feels distinct, memorable.
And what's truly fascinating here is the imagery, how concrete, evocative descriptions bring Roshar's very alien landscapes and unique phenomena to life. Think about the high storms ever present, both destructive and life-giving, or the way light interacts with different gemstones, the magical transformations of Spren. These aren't just descriptions. They function as powerful symbols of upheaval, of renewal, all through the book.
That's a great example, like Kaladin's connection to the storm, drawing in Stormlight. It visually represents his struggle against his inner darkness and his eventual move towards light and hope. Right?
Precisely. The environment itself mirrors the characters' internal journeys. It's incredibly well integrated.
And structurally, he's just a master architect. Sanderson weaves together flashbacks, these interludes focusing on other characters, and the epigraphs at the start of chapters to build this really intricate narrative mosaic. The flashbacks, especially Kaladin's backstory in this book, give crucial context for his present struggles. They deepen our understanding so much.
And the interludes, jumping to different people and places across Roshar, they expand the world without derailing the main plots. They give us these tantalizing glimpses of the bigger conflicts brewing.
And those epigraphs, often they're snippets of ancient texts or prophecies. They add layers of foreshadowing and thematic depth. It's complex, but it works. The parallels he draws between different storylines, like the similar ways Kaladin and Dalinar are both struggling to find their purpose and become leaders, that really reinforces the core themes. It links these seemingly disparate character journeys brilliantly.
It's like seeing the same fundamental human questions played out in different contexts, across different lives and timelines. Really effective.
Speaking of layers, as we break down these intricate parts of the story, it's a good moment to remember how powerful stories can be for inspiring reflection. For more insights like these, you should check out Mindful Moments. That's our YouTube channel. It offers AI book analysis, summaries, and critiques, all aimed at inspiring reflection and rational thought. Definitely worth a look.
Okay, continuing with those advanced techniques, Sanderson makes really effective use of repetition and parallelism. Think about the ideals of the Knights Radiant. Phrases like life before death, strength before weakness, journey before destination. They aren't just spoken once. They recur throughout the story, acting as a kind of moral compass. They really underline character transformation and clarify the moral stakes involved. Kaladin's constant struggle to actually live by these ideals, especially, I will protect those who cannot protect themselves, even with all his own pain. That's a powerful example of this repetition driving his arc. We see characters wrestling with these core principles again and again.
Yeah, it shows their growth, or sometimes their failures, very clearly.
Then there's juxtaposition and contrast. Sanderson puts powerful opposing concepts side by side. Righteousness versus vengeance. Hope versus despair. Consider Dalinar. His past as the Blackthorn, this ruthless warlord, contrasted so sharply with his present self, trying to unite Alethkar through diplomacy and his codes of war.
That contrast is stark.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it forces us to interrogate how characters evolve, doesn't it? It constantly challenges our expectations about what defines a hero or even a villain. It makes you question if redemption is truly possible and what form it takes. And finally, irony and illusion are woven in pretty skillfully. Sanderson uses situational irony in character decisions and their outcomes. Sometimes it's tragic, sometimes deeply satisfying. Think about the irony of Kaladin, the former slave, becoming this powerful symbol of freedom and protection for others. Or the hidden truths about Roshar's history that completely flip earlier assumptions on their head. Alongside this, he subtly weaves in allusions to broader myths or philosophical ideas, drawing on archetypes and universal human experiences. It adds layers of meaning without ever feeling heavy-handed or, preachy.
So, wrapping this all up, what does this mean for the book's overall effectiveness? I mean, ultimately, Sanderson just truly immerses you in this incredibly complex, epic world. He makes these profound, philosophical questions feel emotionally accessible through the characters while simultaneously building this sustained tension and sense of awe. It keeps you turning thousands of pages, just eager for the next piece of the puzzle. It's really a masterclass in engaging storytelling that doesn't shy away from intellectual depth.
And crucially, as we've touched on, the story maintains that logical progression, both in the world-building rules and in character motivations. That's absolutely vital for a series this massive. Everything feels earned, from the smallest character interaction to the biggest world-shattering threat. Plus, the ethical dilemmas. They're treated with real nuance. There are no easy answers, no facile resolutions. It forces both the characters and you, the reader, to genuinely grapple with difficult choices. And that makes the payoff for each character's arc, whether it ends in triumph or tragedy, feel incredibly resonant.
So, considering all these deliberate choices, Sanderson makes the logic, the emotion, the structure, the language. Here's a final thought for you. How might understanding an author's rhetorical toolbox, all these techniques we've discussed, change the way you approach your next read? Or maybe even how you craft your own messages, whether that's in a story you write, a presentation you give, or just, a regular conversation. We really hope this deep dive into Words of Radiance has given you some sharper insight into the power of storytelling. To delve even deeper, click the link on screen for the in-depth book summary. Please subscribe for more analyses like this one, share it with a fellow reader or writer if you found it useful, or perhaps purchase the book via our link. And as always, remember to think rationally. See the many genre-based book podcasts at Mindful Moments. Subscribe and nourish your mind on the go.